Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more. Matter of fact, the average time they've spent here is 23 years. People were affected today. But living in the United States all this time with this fear and uncertainty, we can fix that. And that's what I'm going to do today. Fix it.
Well, there's Joe Biden announcing his amnesty for spouses, another peg in the wheel of, yes, it is the transformation of America. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm Randy Tobler, along with producer Hannah, John Marsh, and later on, Mike Murphy joins us. And that sounded like a little bit of a description of maybe a suburban neighborhood somewhere in Columbia. Just, people have been together for 23 years and they can't get a break, and housing costs are expensive, and he's going to fix it.
I did have to laugh at the, they've been living in uncertainty. Well, it must not be too scary if they've been here on average 23 years.
I know, it's amazing. So it's probably the largest amnesty since DACA, that deportation against, criminal aliens, whatever that. And
I think for a lot of people, the thing that got their attention was Biden's flip-flop on this because, he was first of the month. He was sounding tough, and I'm going to take care of the border once and for all. Then all of a sudden this one comes out of left field.
Yeah, well, 500,000 votes. You spread that over the 20 counties in 5 states that make a difference. Well, that could be that plus a little loan debt forgiveness here and a little pandering there. And you never know how an election turns out, no matter what the polls say. Well, that's among the stories we'll be covering this morning. We'll be getting deeper into depth in exactly what that executive order meant with Andrew Arthur, our guy who is an ex-immigration judge and now a real expert on this area. He'll be with us at 7:08, so you won't want to miss that. Zack Smith at 8:08 to preview the last couple weeks and some pivotal decisions coming down from the Supreme Court, along with a New York appeals court that has said no, Donald Trump, at least until either Judge Marsh does away with it or you're sentencing the gag order against witnesses and others. Remember from that accounting error? The hush money trial. The felony conviction of Donald Trump. Remember that?
You better get it right,
and the gag order. Well, yeah, that stays in place. If this is an election interference at its best by one man in a robe, Judge Marsh, I don't know what is. Gets my goat. So we've got, and then later on at 6:35, Mike Murphy, of course, from Como Buzz. You hear him here on the news and as well on Columbia Buzz on Sunday mornings. He'll be in to join us to talk about the Riley Strain autopsy. So we have more details on Riley Strain, that Mizzou student who drowned down there in Nashville. And that autopsy's out. We'll bring you that news at 6:35. And, of course, today is Juneteenth.
Oh, I was going to say Wednesday.
Juneteenth. I've been waiting for it all year.
Have you?
Yeah. Well, we don't get off. Your Brandon gets off. All state workers and others get off.
Oh, yeah, and he's only reminded...
Federal, local.
Yeah, and he's only reminded me about 12 times this week.
Are Jefferson City and Columbia offices closed too, John?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All the government offices right down to the city and county level are closed.
Yeah, I'm telling you. It's how many if you were to max out do city workers within the state of Missouri, do they max out on holiday opportunities? Or, well, I guess there's some state holidays that the cities don't observe. I'm not sure.
I believe state workers get a total of 19 holidays off.
Okay. 19.
And most oftentimes, at least in Jefferson City, county and city government, try to track right along with the state holidays. Wow. And in healthcare, those holidays like that are sometimes your busy days.
Yeah, those are everyone wants to come in and get their tune-up in those days. That's for sure. Yeah. So, good for all of you that are off today. Hope you have a nice day. It looks like the weather is going to be more very humid, hot, humid. Seems like July weather. Summer doesn't officially start till, what is it, the 22nd? I mean, it's only in a couple days.
Yeah, a couple days.
So summer came last week, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know.
You know what, though? I was in Hobby Lobby last week, and they have an extensive fall decor section already. And, you know, it gave me hope that maybe we can make it through the butt crack of summer and make it
to walk through the fall display and makes you feel cooler by association.
Yeah, and you know, maybe we can make it through the intense heat to make it to pumpkin spice latte season.
Wait a minute. It's checking my watch. Let me wake up, Randy. It's only June 19th, and you're telling me the autumn decorations are out?
Oh yeah. But, I mean, they keep Christmas stuff out almost all year long. So, I mean, I'm not that surprised.
So, like the yellow and orange leaved wreaths and stuff?
Yeah, pumpkins, hay bales.
Little black cats here and there.
Yeah,
you know, because those faux hay bales, those are the cream of the crop when it comes to decorating for fall.
And don't forget the scarecrow yard mannequins, you know, with the little straw coming out from their hair. Or the he and she. Don't forget about those either. You know, you plop those in your garden. Maybe I need to try those among my grapevines. I've got grapevines at the farm, and every year. Between
the birds eat all your grapes.
Oh man, it's like they're doing well. They're doing well, and then late September, early October, mid-October, depending on the variety. Oh man, I'm so excited, and then I'm not there for 5 days, and I come back 5 days later, and they've been harvested all right, but not by Randy.
Well, it's really nice of you to put those treats out for the birds. I'm sure they really appreciate that.
One of these years, I'm going to buy one of those, you know, those floppy 10-foot tall man with the floppy hands at the used car dealer, balloons that you see.
The inflatable things?
Yeah, those inflatable things. You rent the little inflator thing and you put that on there. I'm going to buy one of those and put that out there. I understand in the vineyards in California they use those. But, you know, the birds get smart. They get acclimated to anything.
Sure they do.
Yeah.
Just need to get one of those chicken wire, like arches, to put over your garden.
I think a lot of people put on the nets. I've tried that. Yeah. But then the possums crawl up.
Then you have the birds who eat all your grapes and then deposit them on your windshield of your big A truck parked nearby.
Yes, the big A truck turns into a chameleon black and purple truck at that point. You're right. Okay, so I have to relate a story that happened to me yesterday. It's a little thing, but I wondered at 573-874-9390 if anyone else has had this problem. And maybe I just don't know how to work the wheels of Amazon.
Are you going to have your poopy pants on?
Well, I'm just going to relate a story. No poopy pants, just a story.
Okay. So,
someone that I know and love very well borrowed my pressure washer, and they created a ulcer about the size of a silver dollar on their shin because they pressure washed their shin. And
this sounds like one of your kids.
I'm someone I know and love very dearly.
I will protect their identity.
And so then I thought, well, okay, it's my job to step in and, you know, let's do some wound care. And because it was pretty much, it's sort of like a bad burn, you know. And so I got one of the things you can use. It's really good if you have that kind of a wound where you've had like a scalding or something. It's a product called Meta Honey is the brand name, but it's a honey soaked patch basically. And it turns out that the honey is a very good antiseptic, and it helps sort of keep the wound clean at the time and moist enough to where the new cells can sort of come in and slide in. Very
holistic of you.
Very good job. And they use it in the wound centers, actually. They use it in the wound centers. Anyone who works in the healthcare and in the wound industry would know that. There's a lot of specialty, gels and colloidal this and silver that and, all kind of. But I thought, okay, so I get some Meta Honey. By golly, I saw it on Amazon. So I ordered it last week, and I had it sent to the office. And in our building, over on Keene Street at the Boone Clinic building there, I put, because it said I created a new address. Because now I'm doing, so I figured I'm going to do this under the medical thing. So I put in the address along with the suite number. And little did I know, so then Monday I get a notice from Amazon. I'm like, where is this supposed to be here in the next? Because they gave a window when it was going to be there. And, with these kind of things, time is a little bit of the essence. You want to get on these wounds right away so they heal up and they're purty and heal nicely. And so I get I'm like, what's going on? I don't think I got a notice on my phone or on the email or anything. and I check on the Amazon deal, and I go to my profile and check your orders, and it says, oh, tried to deliver on Sunday, and we couldn't deliver it.
That's happened to me before.
Okay. So then it says you can add some instructions. So I push the add your instructions button. I put in there, look, just go in tomorrow, go in during business hours, and even till whatever, 6, 7 o'clock, because people are there late. Go straight to the back. Just walk. I did it explicitly. Walk through the front lobby door, keep walking, go straight back to where the maintenance area is and the mail room is there, and just lay it on the counter. Be fine. Or give it to anyone who happens to be there. It's a small building. We all know one another. We all, everyone gets. And so I figured, okay, I wasn't there on Monday, but yesterday I was there. Well, I wasn't there part of the day on Monday. And then yesterday I was there. And I look on the profile, and it still says, the delivery guy chatted with me and said, I'm here, and you're not in your suite. So I couldn't deliver it.
Well, he might have rules that say he has to hand it to someone in your office or you.
Well, but why did it say add instructions?
Well, you could put in the instructions to throw it off a cliff, and you wouldn't want them to do that.
But
you can put whatever you want in the instruction box.
So then the instructions are meaningless.
Well, if it goes against the rules that he has to follow.
Why would they allow me to put instructions in there if they didn't describe what the rules were? They didn't say it. You had to sign for it. Look at this.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate
I'm trying to
for
diss
the delivery
on Amazon.
guy.
Let me diss on Amazon, would you? Okay. So then I looked at, there had been 2 of these messages, 2 successive days. My instructions were ignored. The thing went undelivered. So what did I do? I called Amazon. It takes forever to try to find a number to call Amazon. But finally, you can press a button and they call you. So I get this gal I think she's from India. Very heavy Indian accent. Can I help you? I want to help you solve your problem. I don't know what to. Okay, so.
Hello, my name is Ruth.
Yes, I know. I said, look, I got a problem. I need this right away. So, yeah, my name is Ruby. I don't know what her name was. And I don't have anything against Indian people, but she had such a thick accent, I couldn't make sense of half of what she was saying. What it came down to is, at this point, they try to deliver 3 times, and after that, they quit. I said, well, look, why don't you just redirect it to my home then? I cannot do that. You only have 2 options. What? She says, I can either refund or replace it. I said, well, good. Replace it and send it to my home. I cannot do that. The replacement will go to the previous address. I'm like, what do you mean? I was going, do you know how long I was on the phone before she said, can you please hold on a minute while I check into your account and see? And this went on and on and on. By the timer on my phone, producer Hannah and John, I was on the phone for 40
of doors fall out of the sky.
Well, that was Josh Hawley, along with the Boeing CEO David Calhoun, in a little bit of a grilling session yesterday. And this on the heels of a Boeing whistleblower coming out, another one. And that's how we start the Daily DC Rundown today. Yes, indeed, in the wake of 2 crashes of the 737 MAX in the past few years, and, of course, ongoing legal, battles over that, and, people wanting remediation for that, and they will probably get it. Allegations that there were concealed safety steps that were not taken, parts that perhaps weren't up to speed. Calhoun took a huge grilling, but he did apologize and face the families and says, he turned around, said, "I apologize for the grief we have caused. We are focused on safety." Wow. It seems like the reality of a great iconic company sort of flies in the face of that reality. Boy, oh boy, that's tragic to see.
Have you seen his salary numbers, this Calhoun guy? Like $20 million a year. And when he retires, he's got like a $45 million, whatever you want to call it, sign-off bonus, golden parachute or whatever.
And you're right, and he's stepping down later this year. So several former employees have testified that the company retaliated against people speaking out against the company. And, I don't know that we've heard the end of this Boeing story. Hopefully they will somehow retool, literally, and set themselves straight. For all of you getting on a plane, this is not reassuring, is it? But I guess still the statistics would say still a pretty safe way to go.
Hopefully Stephanie isn't listening right now.
I know. We're getting on a plane later on to go to a conference, so I don't know. We'll see.
Well, those 2 crashes you referenced back in, 2018, 2019, there were like 300 people total who died in those plane crashes. It wasn't insignificant.
No, those were something else. And then, of course, the terror in the sky up there in Alaska when the emergency door blew out, and what was it, missing a bolt or something during assembly?
The bolts weren't put back in it properly.
It's crazy.
It's not like when you put together furniture, they shouldn't have any extra pieces.
No, you're right. And the U.S. Surgeon General has called for warning labels on social media platforms saying urgent action is needed. This is a crisis. According to him. And Governor Gavin Newsom, of course, the putative candidate for president of the United States when they shuffle Joe off to Buffalo.
Allegedly.
Will be We have 5 illegals. Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that. We are going to talk about the illegal border crisis and what it means for us, because we think of these things that geographically seem to be removed from us, but no, think again. I mean, this Rachel Moran, who was murdered last year, and they did some great investigative work, and they connected the killer who had entered illegally to a crime against a woman and her young child in Los Angeles. He had escaped prosecution in El Salvador for alleged murder down there. And investigators did a fabulous job. And, finally, it looks like he's the guy. They identified him, I guess, with DNA and then a bell cam or a door cam video from the L.A. thing, and they connected him to Maryland. That was the second episode up there within the last couple of years. Was it yesterday or the day before? A 13-year-old little girl, a young lady, I guess, young teen, playing with a young boy in the playground, and a guy, another illegal, takes them into a wooded area, ties them up, rapes her, and some citizens tracked them down based on tattoo reports that the police released. And I guess they held this guy under a car, got him trapped under a car until the cops could get there. But, I mean, I'm telling you, this is a big problem for everywhere. We're all border communities now. There's no getting away from that. And it's just the truth, and we have to recognize it. Paul, let's see. Richard says, seems like 5 illegals, quote, kidnapped a teen in Indiana, got stopped in Macon County. I hadn't seen that. Mike Murphy joins us now. Have you heard that reporting?
No.
Wow. I didn't realize that. We'll have to look that up. That's listener Richard tells us that. So it's a big problem, and I don't know. But we have other news going on. Mike Murphy's in, and Mike, the autopsy on Riley Strain, the kid who was down there on spring break, I believe, wasn't it?
Fraternity trip.
Yeah. And down in Nashville, and then they showed him staggering out of a bar, and next thing you know, they found his body floating in the river.
14 days later.
Yeah.
No surprises.
The autopsy's out.
Yeah, the autopsy came out yesterday, the report, and toxicology report. So according to that, no surprises. He drowned. Accidental drowning is the cause of death. His blood alcohol content was in the 0.22 range, which
almost 3 times the legal limit.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse, but that is 3 times more than you can drive.
Plus, there was tetrahydrocannabinol. There was weed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So he got too close to that river, apparently.
Yeah. Caffeine, too.
Sad story.
Sad story.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is the investigators, this is something that's always interested me. The investigators, they say, or the police are looking into whether he was overserved at the bar. Now, how does a bartender really, how would you expect a bartender to gauge that, except in the most obvious, overt kind of behavioral problems?
They're trained.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're trained to detect when somebody is being overserved. Of course, it commonly happens. I think what happened here is what they're saying, the bar that last served him, they only served him 1 drink, and that he came in there, intoxicated previously.
Yeah. If you're bar hopping.
Who knows? Yeah.
We saw him staggering on the multiple surveillance videos, even before and after he was put out of that Nashville bar.
Well, he was asked to leave in the bar's defense also. So, who knows what was really, well, I'm sure there's plenty of people who know what was really going on there. But I think anytime there's a death after somebody's left a bar like that, or perhaps not every time, but often there's going to be a lawsuit back against the bar. That's just part of their business. They know it's coming. They have, most of them, the larger ones, are certainly insured for it.
Wow.
For whatever that's worth. But yeah, that's a common problem. And I think the bars in Columbia, for example, I know the service industry, it's a big thing to watch out for people who they think are getting in trouble from being overserved.
Oh, yeah, but even back in the day when I bartended in Columbia, of places, I mean, a college town, when the kids are in town and it's busy, you're lucky to manage the rush.
Yeah.
Much less keep tabs on everybody and, how drunk they are and of age with fake IDs and low tolerances because they're young people and the whole 9 yards.
That's a real art, bartending. I mean, it's a real skill. Mm-hmm. You talk about multitasking,
Absolutely.
Just the business of it, as you mentioned, John. But then, as cocktail craft has evolved, and it's sort of an art form now. you gotta have your act together. You got to be on your toes.
Fantastic experience for managing people, getting along with people.
Yeah.
It's good early in life experience for somebody.
I think I've told the story. One of the best receptionists we ever had up at the hospital. She was a patient of mine, and I just noticed during the interactions in the office, and you get to know people what they do. She was a bartender at the Alibi bar, literally the Alibi, and down the street, or down the road. And I said, man, she'd be a fabulous receptionist because they're great people.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be a psychologist in a sense, right, John?
Yep.
Hearing everyone's literally crying in their beer.
Yeah, what do they call them in healthcare? PSRs, right? Patient service representatives. It's kind of the same thing when you're on the other side of the bar.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to be firm and be able to control a situation because they come up too.
That's true. Yeah. Hey, so I saw in Como Buzz that you're reporting that Stephen Weber. This is an old story, but I hadn't seen this, that Weber had asked Dave Rathel, who, of course, was arrested for that dust-up in Centralia, to suspend his campaign. Has he done that? Any follow-up on that?
Oh, well, the follow-up is that, well, I don't want to overstate the local Democratic Party splitting, but they're certainly having some internal issues that have to do with, so Weber, who would be, he's running for state senator, he's a former state Democrat Party chair, for goodness sake, termed out state representative, running a shoe-in probably to win that election to be the state senator from Boone County. After Rathel got in that dust up at the Centralia Anchor Fest, a couple days later, or a little bit later, Weber come out and publicly said that Rathel should withdraw from the race, and he had a narrative that went with it that basically it's like, we don't act like this, we don't behave like this, Republicans act like this, and blah blah.
Okay, trying
blah
to
blah blah.
politicize it.
And I think assert his moral authority is how it felt to me. Well,
I think he's missing a bet. I think he ought to throw down the gauntlet and take on Jake Paul. Since Mike Tyson delayed it,
Well, so I think like the very next night, I think it was already scheduled though. The Democrat committee, the Central Democrat Committee here in Boone County met, and at the end of it all, after a lot of discussion, from what I understand, they voted to support all candidates running, which means they're supporting Rathel. So they sort of rebuked Stephen Weber in this, and some of them are quite. What would you call, not real happy with how Weber has handled this. It comes off as a little bit grandstanding-ish, and he's got a ton of money, and then there's some grousing about why doesn't he help these candidates get elected instead of, taking this particular tack that he took. So no judgment from me on either one because it's messy on either side, but it's interesting and newsworthy. That's what went down.
Just last week, it was last Thursday at the I-70 groundbreaking ceremony. I mean, Brian Houseworth told us that he ran into Dave Rathel at the ceremony, and Rathel, I believe, gave Houseworth a pamphlet for his campaign, and I mean, all signs are pointing to that Rathel was going to stay in the race.
Oh yeah, absolutely, he's going to stay in the race. I think it's going to be interesting. This could probably, if a good enterprising reporter wanted to go up to Centralia and work, on my Sunday show, I had a couple of witnesses call in and tell us what happened. And what we're hearing out of the Dems is that, Rathel has a right to defend himself, blah, blah, blah. But that's not matching up with what we're hearing. But we don't have an official police investigative report yet until I think it's July 16th. He has his court date. Mm-hmm. And we'll find out a narrative of what the actual professional investigators, the police, have to say about this. And it'll be interesting to see how that jives with his self-defense explanation.
I've talked with him once on my afternoon show last year, I believe it was, maybe the year before, and his online presence. I can tell you in both instances, he's a combative person. That's his demeanor. It's combative.
It was explained to me when he told me, I called him up for a comment, and I got like a couple of word answer about as close to the point as you can get. And it was just kind of explained to me through his friends, because I reached back out. He had no reason to be that way. I think he's got me confused with maybe other media or others. Because I've always tried to treat him with respect. I'm actually happy he's in the race. We need people to be in these races that they perhaps are long shots to win, just to make the other candidate explain themselves, to be able to discuss the issue, have forums and debates. But explain. It was right on brand, so it's like right on brand for Dave Rathel. So Dave Rathel getting in a little bit of fisticuffs can be explained as right on brand, and I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, well, at least
his court appearance is just in municipal court in Centralia, isn't that correct?
Yeah, but it's in Boone County. It's at the Boone County building. So what I found out during this, John, is that Centralia's municipal court actually takes place physically in the Boone County building, in the Boone County courthouse. Interestingly enough, yeah.
Does this whole what you say is a bit of a fracture within the between the committee and Stephen Weber and so forth? Does that play into why the committee chairman resigned?
I don't think so. It could, but it happened right after, and I think a lot of people are saying that. And I haven't asked her directly. Somebody probably should. I'm sure she'd say no, and I suspect not. I think
she referenced her mental health.
Yeah, she's been doing that a while. The local Dems, and I shouldn't just put it on them because the Republicans struggle with this too. They've had some really difficult interactions over the last several years between candidates and primaries and who's going to support who. And so I'm sure that's a difficult enough volunteer job that you do that because you're interested and you want to participate, you want to be involved. I think you probably have a certain shelf life in the job too.
It's from time to time in America, whether it's at the federal level or at the local and state level, you see these fractures within the parties. And I mean, really, it applies in both parties now. I mean, between the squad and more moderate Democrats, although I would say that the Democrats have certainly tacked more towards that element of their party and their ideology. But then you got the Republicans, you got the Gates and Marjorie Taylor Greenes, and the more moderates.
Well, and then
locally too.
Beyond philosophical, there's also tactical. It's like, how do we go about these things? Where do we spend our money? Who's giving us money? What we're doing with it? There's a ton of things to have disagreements about. Good people who basically agree on a lot of things, and they're passionate about something. They can have issues in trying to figure out how to go forward.
But what's amazing is these are good people.
Oh, yeah.
They're politically astute. They tend to be historically informed. And yet they don't see the big picture that if you took and agreed on, if you say, look, tactically and even philosophically, I'm gonna jettison, my line in the sand, kind of things to some degree, so that, I'm going to try to get 80% of what I want. Well, you get 80% of what you want, and where do those Venn diagrams overlap? And why don't we collectively get a lot done that we're about? But instead, they sort of do the circular firing squad, and they end up winning very little very often.
Certainly more and more nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see, I actually like seeing Dave Rathel in the race, though. I watched his campaign against Sheree Tolson Rice last time. I don't think he had a chance to win, but he took her on, right. He said a lot of things that were very straightforward, right on the borderline. That's why some people say he's crazy and stuff. But really, that's good local political activity. He doesn't like where she's coming from. He's intelligent about it. He calls it out. He's straightforward. He says it right off the cuff. And I actually think it's kind of refreshing, although I know all my friends on the conservative side will say, no, he's nuts. But just like I defend Chuck Basie, and they're different. The only way these two are very similar is people say the same things about them on different sides. I actually
social media is a crisis in our country. And we're seeing laws, Idaho, recently Florida, banning social media without parental consent under the age of 14, 16 in some places. Gavin Newsom now the other day comes out and wants to ban the use of smartphones in schools. There seems to be a growing realization that, well, I guess to make an analogy, we prohibit kids from smoking and drinking because it's not good for their health. And I think many people, including if you saw The Social Dilemma, that Netflix, I think it was Netflix documentary, the people who created it know that it's warping young minds. So I think there's something there. Hannah, what about you?
There's zero way to enforce any type of ban on social media, whether it be in schools or just in general. There's no way to enforce it.
I don't know. If they come in like Los Angeles is talking about doing and banning cell phones, social media use, and they do a confiscation if you get caught at school with it, they don't give you back your smartphone or whatever.
The harder you crack down on kids, the more it just teaches them to be sneaky.
Yeah, that's very true.
And that's not to say that you shouldn't have rules for kids.
Right.
But the harder you scream and yell that a kid can't have something, the more they're going to want it.
I hear you, and the workaround time that they spend would be a distraction from the studies they should be about. That's the argument there, too.
And the phone is going to be a distraction after they get out of school. So what, like in a perfect world, they're going to have zero access to their phone when they're trying to be productive for the first 18 years of their life, and then all of a sudden they have to figure it out after that. I don't get it. So
this would be the forbidden fruit theory of Hannah, producer Hannah, right? If you make it a forbidden fruit, they're only going to want it more.
Right. And the rules for having to be a certain age to have a social media account, I mean, even when I was growing up, a lot of my friends had put fake birthdays on their profiles.
Yeah.
To make them look older. And it's so easy to do that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, one thing that would be healthy would be to bring your kids to the debate watch next Thursday out at Lakeside Ashland, right?
Yes.
Doesn't it make sense to do that and introduce them to the political world, help with other, like-minded, politically engaged people, explain to them what it means, what's going on? It'd be a great thing.
with fear and uncertainty. We can fix that, and that's what I'm going to do today. Fix it.
Well, it sounds like good old Joe is just going to make things right for people that are just trying to live their everyday American lives. You'd think he was talking about suburban couples out in North Columbia, wouldn't you? Welcome back into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. To help us unpack what came down yesterday through the Biden executive order is our friend Andrew Arthur, who is, of course, an expert in all things immigration from the Center for Immigration Studies. He joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Art, thank you for coming in. Boy, I just keep shaking my head. It's one after another amnesty program. The transformation is underway, isn't it?
Yeah, no, and it's interesting, Randy, that at the same day that the president, issued this amnesty for 550,000 people, probably be much larger than that when it's all said and done, that the Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan arm of Congress, updated its anticipated arrivals of foreign nationals into the United States by 9 million over the next 10 years. So what President Biden has been doing for the last 3 years are probably going to have downstream effects for the next decade or more. And it's probably going to cost us $1 trillion. You really got to read into the report to see that. But, this is a problem, and it's one that the president is making worse, but putting into the best possible terms to describe.
And, this reminds me, the rhetoric around this, and I think what he just said in announcing this, the beginning of the announcement yesterday, reminds me of how Obama and his administration presented the DACA thing about the kids of aliens who had come in with them and illegally, and then, hey, they've been here, they're going to school with your kids, and they're cleaning up, they're sweeping the floor at the local grocery. Come on, And I guess it does tug at the heartstrings a little bit, but still, it's illegal. And it only invites more of that, given this history of, come in illegally, and a few years later, wink, wink, you're going to be made okay.
Yeah, no, and it's a very apt analogy, and it shows your deep knowledge, Doctor, of this subject, because, of course, this is a page out of the Obama playbook. In 2012, we saw DACA. In 2014, President Obama tried to sneak past something very similar to this called DAPA, which was for parents of U.S. citizens born here and citizens under the 14th Amendment and green card holders. And then in 2016, directly after the election, DHS Secretary Jay Johnson restricted the number of people who would be subject to removal in the United States. So taking a page out of that Obama playbook, if it's a year that's divisible by 2 and there's an election coming up or one that just passed, it's time to gin up the amnesty and start to let more people into the United States. But that really is the key point. What actions like this really show to people abroad, especially to people considering coming to the United States illegally, paying that $7,000 to $70,000 fee to the smugglers, is that once you get here, nothing's really going to happen to you because the United States government isn't serious about its immigration laws. We've got some of the toughest immigration laws on the books in the world. We just don't enforce them. And you hear the president talk about we need congressional action. We don't actually need congressional action. Obama controlled the border. Trump controlled the border. What we need is presidential will. And unfortunately, the far end of Pennsylvania Avenue doesn't have the ability to legislate will.
We hear so much from the administration and, how the immigrants are painted as harmless and they're here just to make money and send it home to family and all. I've got family in West Texas out in the Midland area, and they said they've heard from their sheriff out there that organized gangs from Venezuela and even Cuba are coming in and are really involved in the theft of gas and oil from the rigs and everything else out there. So it's not as simple as it's being painted as, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it is curious because one of the responses that you'll hear is that people who enter illegally are actually less inclined to criminality than the native born. That may be true. They may not be true. There's actually no way to prove it one way or the other. It's not really that important because the critical issue, Randy, is that alien criminals commit crimes. And if they're here illegally, they've never been screened for criminality in the way that people who go through the legal process have been. It's crucial to understand we have a legal process that allows about 135 million people to come into the United States. Now, most of those people leave. They're what we call non-immigrants. But 1 million of them are here with green cards. We accept 1 million new foreign nationals every year, and they're all vetted. They're all vetted to make sure they don't have crimes, that they're not terrorists, that they don't have any diseases that they may spread or that's going to cause a burden on the U.S. healthcare system. That legal system is huge, and it works well. In fact, we improved it in the years after September 11th because we learned the lessons of September 11th. The White House has now gone to the other end of the spectrum, and it is de facto, granting amnesty to every person that crosses the border. In fact, I saw a report yesterday in the first 3 quarters of FY 2023, 500,000 people were paroled into the United States. This is a limited power. It's only supposed to be case-by-case basis, only for significant public benefit or urgent humanitarian reasons. Yet somehow the president has managed to move a state-sized population into the United States using that very limited power. And up to this point, the Supreme Court said there's nothing that the states can do about it. This is one of those situations in which Congress does have to act, but not the way the president says. Congress has to act to seize back its ability to control immigration. Congress has plenary power over immigration. They're the only ones that get to set the rules. And yet, slowly the president has gnawed back at that authority and, made Congress an afterthought. So, in the next administration or a second Biden administration, Congress needs to find its will, and it needs to actually cut off money for things the president wants in order to get what the president needs to do to secure this country, stop the criminals coming in, stem the terrorist threat, and control the border.
We're talking with Andrew Arthur, an internationally recognized national security and immigration expert with Center for Immigration Studies. And Art, it's interesting. You said something that is 180 degrees diametrically opposed to the narrative, this constant drumbeat we hear from the Democrats, whether it's in Congress, whether it's from the White House press briefing room, whether it's from the Oval Office, that our impeached Secretary Mayorkas, our immigration system is broken. Our immigration system is broken. You said, actually, it's quite orderly. It's all authorized statutorily. Everything is, in order. You were an immigration judge. You know the system better than anyone. And you said it actually works quite well. So what are they saying when they say the system is broken? What do they mean?
Well, and again, you must be a poker player because you've recognized the con in this game. The con in this game is that from day one, the Biden administration has set out, I don't think this is deliberately, I think they, in their own minds, they have great intentions, but, has set out to break the immigration system. We had about 1.5 million cases in immigration court when Biden came in. We now have more than 3 going on 4 million cases before 725 immigration judges. We had 55,000 detention beds. Biden wanted to drive that down to 25,000 and promised Congress that was all that it needed. In fact, you may not realize this if your listeners go to our site, CIS.org. You'll read that the American people actually dodged a bullet this week when the Supreme Court issued a decision, which if it had gone the other way, and it's sort of an arcane decision, would have allowed the Biden administration to readmit people who had been previously deported from the United States. I mean, this was a momentous decision, but it's going to go ignored because, the harm never occurred. But, each one of these things is going to make it more difficult for the next administration, and an administration that's actually serious about border enforcement. Again, heaven forfend that we have a terrorist attack. This administration, either this time or the next time, actually needs to get serious about all this. It's going to be very difficult to put all those pieces back together, to bring the border under control, to actually deal with the 13.5 million illegal aliens who are present in the United States. None of these things are insurmountable, Randy, but, we need to stop the bleeding at this point. President's right. Congress needs to act. The president's wrong in the way that he says Congress needs to act because they need to stem in the president from abusing the authorities that he has to further break the immigration system.
I know one of the guys they interviewed on one of the major networks was a Biden critic, and his take on this was, with the president's latest policy, it's pointless because he claimed that, and he's a Homeland Security guy, claimed that longstanding undocumented immigrants married to a U.S. citizen would ever be deported anyway.
Yeah, no. I mean, they are, and again, you can go back to, even the George H.W. Bush administration, which was my first one that I ever served under. Those individuals are low priorities for enforcement. And, first you go after national security risks, then you go after criminals, then you go after, recent arrivals. People who have been here for 10 years who are married to United States citizens, Randy, are the lowest of priorities. And this is important, they already have an avenue by which they can regularize their status. They can get a waiver from the Biden administration or from any, previous administration that will allow them to leave the United States, go pick up their visa abroad, come back in, get their green cards, and will act as if nothing ever happened. So this really isn't that necessary. This is a political tool that the president is using. And here's the important point. He is daring Republican state AGs, including the one in Missouri, to challenge this, because if this, scheme gets struck down, he could say, look, Republicans want to separate families. If it doesn't get struck down, then he gets what he wants, and he's going to build up goodwill amongst those 500,000 U.S. citizen spouses who are now going to be able to continue their lives with their husbands or wives here in the United States.
Yeah.
So, this is a purely political election year stunt, but nobody's ever going to call him out for it.
You know what's sad, and we only have about a minute left here, Art, is we have a text here from someone who says his nephew married an illegal alien. She was brought to the USA as a young child, went through the process legally to become a citizen, long and difficult process, but went through the process. I know when I'm in line at the grocery store and someone cuts in, I'm mad as a hornet, and I can't imagine how it must make the people who have gone back to their country in this new group that is going to now be, amnestied. But otherwise, those who have to do the formal way, go to the country, get whatever the paperwork they need, and come back. It must make them just boil.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely crucial point. Let me quantify what you're talking about. Because the Biden administration is almost solely focused right now on giving work permits to people who entered illegally, all of those legal, benefit applications have been pushed to the back burner. It now takes longer for you to get an immigrant visa for your spouse. It now takes longer for you to get a non-immigrant visa for your fiance to bring your fiance here. You want to adopt a kid? It's going to take you 33 months, almost twice as long as it took you under the Trump administration if that kid is coming from abroad. These are the real costs that all of this is imposing on the system, and those additional 550,000 parole applications that Biden's talking about. When we talk about breaking the immigration system, USCIS, who's going to adjudicate these cases, has a backlog of 3 million. Oh. What happens when you add 550,000 to that total? I can tell you what's going to happen. It's going to collapse.
Oh, just a disaster. Well, Art, thank you for being with us. I will refer everyone to read your work, those of Steve and Mark at the Center for Immigration Studies, the premier information source, by the way, folks, for the people who make the decisions, the policymakers. So I don't offer
And you get this look on your face when it's late because you know I'm going to ream you for it.
I know. I'm like, okay, I'm like the dog that just pooped in the living room, right?
So in the last month or so, we've been seeing a lot of stories about, high school graduations, college graduations, students who have done really cool things during their time in school. This is one of those stories, and it's maybe one that's going to make you feel a little inadequate, so I apologize to the Wake Up family members that are listening right now. But there was a special graduate from Stanford University this year. Her name is Virginia, goes by Ginger.
Okay.
She is 105 years
Wow.
old.
Oh.
She is a great-grandmother, and she finally got to receive her master's degree from Stanford. Basically, what had happened, she was supposed to be a part of the class of 1940. So she completed her bachelor's degree in education, went on to be a teacher, decided to pursue her master's degree, and then World War II happened.
Yeah.
Her husband was drafted, and so she ultimately decided, I am just going to bow out of my education. She was so close to finishing. She had all of the coursework completed. All she needed to do was defend a thesis. And the school dropped that requirement in recent years. And so she technically was able to graduate with her, to receive her master's because they dropped that requirement since she had completed all the coursework. So she was able to walk in a graduation ceremony, and she was the only graduate of the class of 1940. So 83 years after she, started her college career,
Isn't
she
that
was
great?
finally able to get her master's degree.
Now that's a heartwarming story. I mean,
is.
that's really good. And I get 90. I think, well, there's a lot of self-awareness when I read through the text here. Texter Paul is like, what? A lot of people have reflected what Texter Paul was saying, and that is like, wait a minute, I thought you need to, in order to be legally married, there's a citizenship question in most jurisdictions. So how can, in the first place, these people be married if they were allegedly, some justice of the peace, some authority had to ask them? They must have lied on their marriage certificate application, right? Mike Murphy joins us now. We were talking with Art Arthur about. I'm sure this is exactly what Mike wants to talk about. Well, Mike's a well-read guy. Mike knows all about this. But Mike is a Renaissance guy when it comes to journalism. He knows about everything. See, my only knowledge of this topic comes from the TLC series 90 Day Fiancé. So. Well, but I mean, this whole flap over Biden's executive order and people who have lived together for more than 10 years, been in the country more than 10 years and been married, whatever. Well, wait a minute, though. In the first place, how can you be married if you have an illegal that you've married? How could you get married in the first place? I don't understand that. So we'll circle back around. I'll see if I can touch base with Art and get you an answer for that. But then the texter says, I'm feeling very cynical. Yes, you are. At least he admits it. So did they discover animal flatulence contains methane that's really combustible? It was the ag department. I don't know. It sounds like maybe yes. That was my exact thought when I heard that story yesterday. I don't understand it. And I promised you we'd talk about the Taylor Swift, Candace Owens controversy, and then Mike. I'm sure Mike will want to talk about this for 5 or 10 minutes for sure. But I thought of you because I'm trying to get into your world more and more, producer Hannah. And you follow the Taylor Swift and Kelsey thing. Our listeners are interested because the Kansas City Chiefs, right? It's fun. But I guess from a conservative viewpoint, it does beg the question. Candace Owens is now saying that Taylor should stay out of the public eye at the football games. But she shouldn't be involved in things because who is she to? Because she's a progressive woke loon. But Candace Owens is sort of the same thing, just not progressive and woke. I think Candace... You know what I mean? They're the same thing on opposite ends of the spectrum. She went after Ben Shapiro. She was employed by the Daily Wire for a year and a half or so. And, she was a firebrand in the conservative movement, and I think quite... she testified again in Congress, and I thought they were great testimonies. She shot back at Congress people, but she seems to have alienated herself from a lot of people on the right. I used to really like Candace Owens, and I do feel like she's sort of hopped off the deep end a little bit. Or, maybe it's intentional, maybe it's all like a marketing scheme, but I don't know. It seems like she's burning bridges right and left. Yeah. Well, it was kind of an end around. Didn't she kind of start talking about what Jason Kelsey said about Harrison Butker's graduation speech, and it all kind of cycled back to Taylor Swift. Candace Owens vows to permanently ban Taylor Swift from the next NFL season. She woke up terribly. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a mistake. But maybe that's not even true. Maybe it's a false report. At any rate, I hope so for Candace Owens' sake. Let's ask Mike Murphy what he's working on Como Buzz for this week. Is it Taylor Swift? No. I'm always amazed that, like with the Kelsey or the Butker thing. Butker's a great athlete, right? I mean, he's the world-class kicker. So automatically we care about his political views. I've always found that somewhat. I could care less what Harrison Butker thinks about pretty much anything. I mean, I'd happily shoot the breeze with him someplace, but how it becomes a national thing is amazing. Celebrities' opinions. Kickers are kind of cerebral anyway. Yeah, I think if you talk to an interior defensive lineman, he probably wouldn't have had the same take on it. It's amazing the influence celebrities have on the influence on opinion making. It's just amazing. I am working on, I got a couple stories coming out this week. Water is a thing, becoming a thing in Colombia that... well, I certainly hope so. I mean, it's been quiet. Our Water and Light has a long, pretty illustrious history of providing reliable electricity and water. Water you could argue, could be higher quality, but
a very illustrious history, really, of providing fairly inexpensive and reliable water and light. But it's kind of in the process of falling apart. And what's going on the electric side is a story we could spend an hour on. We're not keeping the electrical infrastructure up. We're not investing in it. We're not getting work done. Citizens are willing to pay. They've proved that over and over again. The city asked them for bond money, bond financing. They'll vote it in. In water, the quick story, to cut to the chase, is voters approved what was part of a bond issue in 2018, $23 million to upgrade the water treatment facility at McBain. It had been downgraded because of its age from being able to produce 32 million gallons a day to only 24 million gallons a day. That's getting in the ballpark of our capacity. It needs to be brought back to its full capacity.
In the context of a growing community, growing demand.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So voters approved it easily. 68% they gave the city the money to do it. Well, 6 years later now, more like 8 years since it was first proposed, 6 years since the voters approved it, construction hasn't even begun, okay?
Well, there's consultants to hire, you know.
There's all kinds of excuses and reasons, but a lot of other city projects are getting done, but something's going on in water and light. And bottom line is this hasn't gotten done. But what's happened then, a year ago, the water and light folks went to city council and said, okay, here's what's happened. That $23 million to fix the water plant is only going to get half of the work done that we told voters it was going to get done because of inflation and other reasons. And then COVID came and the supply chains all got disrupted and all this, the cost of everything is just more. So that $23 million is only going to get half of what we said we were going to get done. Well, now, as we're getting close to doing the project, it turns out that half is going to cost $40 million. The city's approved to finance. They've had to go pull money out of other projects to get $40 million. So what you got is half is costing $40. The other half has been deferred. It's safe to assume it's going to cost $40. So what was a $23 million project in 2018 has ballooned into an $80 million project today with no particular means for financing anything beyond the $23 million. Now, what they've done to get the 40 is they've gone to other projects that were approved in that bond issue and defunded those, pulled money out of those, which they're going to have to explain to voters sooner or later, to get this project done. So that's more unfunded deferred work that was critical enough to go to voters. So you're talking about in the neighborhood of $100 million plus. It's getting to be the kind of a number that you can't just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, they're going to figure this out. Yeah. So it's
time is money.
Yeah. Yep.
Time is money.
Yeah. So this
and
is
they by delaying and dancing around, and we talked to Mayor Buffalo on Monday, and I asked her about the water tower, and she used the not in my backyard, which I appreciate that argument, but there's a way to do that, and that's your prime responsibility as a city governance is to make sure the infrastructure keeps pace with the growth.
Well, talk about being out of touch with reality. So let's say you live out in Thornbrook, a fairly nice subdivision, a very nice subdivision in southwest Columbia. You're on the hill out there. You're towards the end of the line. And since 2015-16, when this first got, you don't have water pressure. In fact, there's times you don't have fire protection. You don't have fire flow. All right?
Wow.
So
hydrants don't have power?
Correct.
Don't have pressure?
Correct. So this gets identified in 2014, 15, 16. They go to voters and get the money to build a new water tower out in southwest Columbia. In 2016, 17, 18, this is discussed. So then it's in the bond issue. Voters say, yes, here's the money. 6 years later from that time, 8 years, 10 years from when it's first discussed, the mayor wants to sit here and say, oh, for some reason, we haven't been able to buy the ground to erect this water tower. After 6 years, there's a lot of outrage percolating around this kind of thing, because if it's a year or 18 months, how about an answer about who's in charge of this? Why aren't they able to do it? What's the holdup? And then what they do is they say, this is all part of a request for proposal from one thing, or number two, these are legal negotiations, so we're protected by sunshine laws. We don't have to tell you. So as of yet, they've never even really explained any of this. They hide behind that. And when you start putting it all together,
people going with water pressure issues for years.
Well, yeah. Their water doesn't run in the summer. They can't take a shower. They have to boil water at times in $1 million homes.
Well, I don't know the process for eminent domain, but if there was ever a time to invoke eminent domain, however a community does that, it's like, hey, I think there's rules about that. You need to offer them a certain percentage above market rate, right? And you just say, we're going to take you to court.
And you don't want to do it. I think it's more like you wouldn't even have to do that. I think they just don't want to spend the money. Now, And what, what we've been saying openly is like, let's just get a couple things straight here. So you're negotiating for a couple acre piece of ground out there. So what if somebody needs an extra $1 million?
Yeah.
We'll give $1 million to buy a retail store downtown with some plans to open a museum to commemorate some jazz thing.
Well, we have our priorities.
All good.
Well, don't forget the homeless hotel.
But but we can't. Well, we can't afford or we can't get done to buy a piece of ground to erect that water tower.
Do you think if this was a low income area, Mike, the narrative would be different and it'd been a done deal?
No, I think it would never get done. I think what they'd tell you in Columbia is if you live in the first ward, you live in they're never going to give you the water tower. They're going to tell you to go buy bottled water or build yourself a tank on your home. No, I think this is I think these people are fairly influential. They're in calling council out all the time. They're bringing facts to them. Most of the community is unengaged and they just don't realize what's going on. And time just goes. Well, I heard the mayor on your show the other day say, we're getting close on this water tower. I sat and listened to the Water and Light Board say that for like 9, 10, 12 months. And I said to myself, hold it. Hold it. What? I haven't been noticing, but you say that every month. So I don't really know. I wish I did know where they're at, and I perhaps should know. But I keep thinking that we're going to hear any day that they've located some ground, and they really need to because this performance. I mean, how do you explain it?
I don't understand. That's a basic obligate function of government. I mean, I just don't get it.
Listener Tim on the texter 874-9390. He has a suggestion. He says they can build the water tower in the middle of one of the roundabouts in Southwest Columbia.
You know what's funny? I think that's what they're going to do. So what I believe is the solution is in the roundabout by the school out there. So that's is that KK and Scott Boulevard, the school furthest to the south. They own some property on the southwest side of that. It is up on a hill. I think there might be some engineering issues or something, but I've heard on numerous occasions that's a potential site, but that has never been confirmed or we don't know. But that would be funny, and it would be a solution. It wouldn't be a bad place to put it, actually.
And Rebecca, she may be asking about the ARPA money. I'm not 100% sure, but she's asking, where did all the money go that the city got years ago?
Yeah. For what? ARPA? It's all been pretty much, it's still in the process of being passed out, but it's pretty much passed out.
And look at where all that money went to.
Well,
services, this program, that program, yeah.
pole. The annual Italian Market Festival has a tradition of dangling Italian meats and cheeses from the grease pole for visitors to attempt to climb. This is, if you remember Rocky, where he's in the grungy gray sweatsuit running through the market and catches the orange from the guy. That's the place in South Philly. They say they brought in a crane, but it was too crowded to use it. And say now the meats and cheeses have been dangling for a month amid record-breaking heat. And even the folks working the Italian market say they're starting to smell. They're working on plans to bring in another crane to the market. But so far, the biggest challenge, they say, the dozens of howling cats in the wee hours of the morning who are leaving their dumpsters to try to climb the pole and fighting to get at the provolone, mortadella, and prosciutto. The solution we came up with, maybe if they baited it with halos and string cheese, we know a doctor who might be able to get them down.
Oh.
Now you know the rest of that story.
Wow.
And see, that would be like, prime string cheese temperature
It
for
would
Randy.
be perfect. I love that. Cheese should be served at room temperature. It really should be. It needs to just mellow out a little bit. If you grab it right out of the refrigerator.
I wonder if that was a halo in the movie the guy threw to Rocky instead of like a navel orange or something.
Yeah, it might have been. What festival was that, John?
This is the Italian Market Festival, and I yelled at Kevin Hilly down the hall on Cat Country, who grew up in Philly. He said that is one of the festivals in Philadelphia of the year.
Wow. Well, we've got some good sausage in Jefferson City, don't we? I know that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're making it all right. You don't want to watch, right? Isn't that the old line?
Yeah, at our favorite place there, yeah. So I do want to remind folks that we're running out of spaces. I keep reminding you, and procrastination's a normal thing. I get it. But you don't want to miss the debate watch party next Thursday. We have to remind you to sign up for that because we do need to have a head count, okay?
And we've been having a lot of folks ask on the Texter and on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page if they're supposed to be receiving a confirmation email after they fill out the RSVP form that's linked on the station's website. You do not need a confirmation email or anything like that. So as long as you filled out the form, we have you down and we have you counted for the total.
Okay, so that's that. Now, and we have some surprises in store.
We do.
But we've already let you know that one of them is get out your very best political T-shirt, right? Because there will be a little contest there.
There will be.
Are we going to have judges or will it be popular? I mean, have you determined that yet, Hannah? How are we going to determine the winner?
Yes, you'll just have to find out next Thursday night.
Oh,
There you go.
I figured that. Look, she won't even let me in on it, John. I'm telling you.
Probably smart.
Coming back soon. I don't know. Well, look, so we'll have to see what happens. And then we've got, I know that Stephanie has an original Made in America MAGA hat, right?
Yes.
And a bust of President Trump that
Yes.
she got from one of her conferences up there in D.C. or up there somewhere that she goes. And other things. We may have some other goodies to give away as well. And I think there'll be some merch as well. Yeah.
Need to get a head
Not
count,
given
though,
away,
so
but-
we know how many hundreds of pounds of popcorn to have on hand. Right?
That accounts for Scott and me. I don't know what
ready, pal. Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Well, welcome back into Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 573-874-9390, the number, if you want to join us on the program. Joining us now is Zack Smith, of course, a senior fellow at Heritage, and knows all things about the Supreme Court, host of the Supreme Court show called SCOTUS 101 podcast. It's a great listen, comes out on Fridays. Not much to talk about in the next week or so, right, Zack? Welcome in.
Yeah, just a quiet few weeks at the court, Randy. The court only has some of the biggest decisions of the term left to decide before the end of June. So, just a quiet few weeks ahead of us at the Supreme Court.
So I should have asked you to come in tomorrow afternoon or Friday this week because, usually it's Thursday or Friday they come down with. But Friday there was a decision that came down that I wanted to talk about because it hasn't gotten a lot of press. But, in light of all of the problems at the border, and now we're seeing the consequences of that, whether it's in Maryland with that murder last year of Rachel Moran that was just, hopefully solved with some great detective work there on the part of the police and authorities between L.A. and Maryland. Reports out of New York City with open in the light of day. A 13-year-old is raped at knife point by an illegal immigrant. These things are really, I think, touching all of us now across the country. And there was a decision that came down Friday about deportation and deportation in absentia. What was that all about?
Yeah, so the case was Campo Chavez versus Garland. And basically, it was essentially about some technical procedures that have to be followed in order to deport someone. And so basically, several people said that they didn't get the notice. They were due to show up to immigration court, and because of that, their deportation orders were invalid. But the court essentially rejected those claims, and the court said because each of the illegal aliens that were challenging their deportation had in fact received the proper notice for the hearings that they then subsequently missed, that they could, in fact, be validly deported and that their deportation orders were valid. So this was, I think, the right decision. It was kind of a technical decision about in the weeds of the statutory language, what it required, but essentially it did not allow these individuals to challenge in absentia their deportation orders.
Yeah, this sounded to me sort of like ignorance of the law or your obligations doesn't excuse you from obeying the law. I mean, the plaintiff was claiming they didn't get notice, right? And so therefore they couldn't be deported because they hadn't had notice. Well, I think they were given notice at some point, but then it was almost like, well, you didn't give me a reminder. And I know I'm embellishing it here, but right. Illegals trying to get away with it, and when they know better.
Right. Well, and look, this is going to be a big issue, Randy, because with the millions and millions of people coming across our southern border, the immigration system is absolutely overwhelmed right now. And so if you continue to give many of these individuals second, third, fourth, fifth bites at the apple, you can imagine that it would become virtually impossible to actually deport anyone, even if they deserve to be deported.
Well, this felony conviction for mistakes in accounting, otherwise known as the hush money trial that Trump was convicted on, this keeps bubbling to the surface. The latest thing, the New York, the appeals court, which is sort of the equivalent of everyone else's Supreme Court. They're weird up there in New York, aren't they? They said that the gag order is still in place, even though he's been convicted. Why would a gag order still be in place? What damage could he do? I mean, if you're arguing it should be in place, the trial's already over. Why did they uphold Judge Merchan's gag order for Trump?
Yeah, it's a great question, Randy. Donald Trump and his lawyers moved to remove the gag order now that the trial is over. Alvin Bragg opposed it, asking for the gag order to remain in place through the sentencing, potentially any appeals. And unfortunately, it looks like the New York appellate courts have upheld that. And we've talked about it before, but anytime a gag order is entered, it's very, very problematic. Judges are typically very hesitant to enter gag orders because of the very real First Amendment concerns. In the United States, we disfavor strongly something called prior restraints, essentially prohibiting people from talking under pain of punishment. And yet that's exactly what this gag order does. And even though it's problematic for anybody whenever a gag order is entered, it's particularly problematic for Donald Trump, who, of course, is one of the leading candidates to be president of the United States. And I think we saw at trial some of the problems that this gag order caused. You heard the mainstream media reporting breathlessly on all the very salacious details that Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, others were testifying about at his trial. And yet Donald Trump couldn't directly respond to many of those media reports because of the gag order. And so, look, I'm disappointed by this decision. I'm not particularly surprised by it, but the problems with this gag order remain nonetheless.
And in the wake of the Hunter Biden conviction, and his sentencing won't occur, for a little while, but do you think that conviction in any way will change either what Alvin Bragg recommends to the judge for sentencing for Trump, or the judge, since both of them have clear evidence? Bragg, I mean, you wrote about Bragg in your book, Rogue Prosecutors. Right. I mean, there's clear evidence that these people are partisan, right? And is there any, will Hunter's conviction and upcoming trial later on this fall on the tax evasion, I mean, You've been a federal prosecutor before. Will that flavor what's recommended to the judge or what he sentences Trump for?
Well, in Donald Trump's case, what's interesting, Randy, is you're absolutely right. We wrote about Alvin Bragg. He's Chapter 10 in our book, Rogue Prosecutors, How Radical Soros Lawyers Are Destroying America's Communities. And what's interesting is if you compare Bragg's conduct in this prosecution of Donald Trump with his normal prosecution policies. Alvin Bragg ran for office essentially pledging not to prosecute most misdemeanors. He's ordered his deputy district attorneys to water down felonies to misdemeanors where possible. He's ordered his deputies to presumptively seek sentences of non-incarceration where defendants are convicted. And even in those rare instances where his deputies will be authorized to seek sentences of incarceration, they can't seek any more than 20 years, presumptively, even for very serious crimes like rape, robbery, and murder. And so it'll be very interesting to watch what he asked for in Donald Trump's case, because certainly it seems like under his prosecution policies, these charges wouldn't have been brought if the defendant's name wasn't Donald Trump. And so if he asked for a sentence of incarceration in this case against Donald Trump, I think it would certainly stand in very stark contrast to his normal policies. Okay, well, let me build on that. So that would, if he were to be harsh in recommending harsh sentencing for Trump, that would be opposed to his precedential behavior, not presidential, but precedential behavior. What about the fact, as the Daily Wire is reporting, that that Alvin Bragg attended a fundraiser shortly before or after the indictment, I guess it was right before, at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in May of 2023. And this group has compared Trump to Adolf Hitler. They did an amicus brief in keeping Trump off the ballot in Colorado. So my question would be, in a different vein, Trump's going to appeal this once he's convicted, once he's sentenced. Yeah. As part of the appeals process, can his lawyers reference behavior like this on the part of Bragg, or when it comes to the conviction, when they appeal that, the sentencing, when it comes to that, can they reference this? Is this something that holds way in the court or not in the appeals process? Well, there's something known as selective prosecution. A selective prosecution claim essentially where a defendant can claim that the prosecutor is targeting that defendant specifically and essentially is warping the law to go after that single person. Now, ordinarily, these claims, they're brought by criminal defendants. Often, they rarely succeed. They're very, very difficult to succeed legally. But there are unique factors about this case. I suspect for many of the individuals who bring selective prosecution claims, the prosecutor doesn't run for office claiming that he's going to prosecute that person if elected. And yet you have that in this case. And so I suspect that type of conduct, campaigning on the idea of prosecuting Donald Trump, attending many of those fundraisers, all of that will be part of the legal claims that Donald Trump brings. Yeah. But look, this reminds me of what happened in Fulton County down in Atlanta, Georgia, with Fani Willis as well. You may remember she was recused, prohibited from prosecuting one of the people she indicted in that post-election RICO case that she brought against Donald Trump and many other individuals as well, because after indicting that individual, she attended a fundraiser or contributed to that person's political opponent and essentially used that indictment for political purposes. And that's inappropriate. Yeah. We also saw something similar in St. Louis with Kimberly Gardner. You may remember after she indicted the McCluskeys for, standing on the porch of their home with the guns to protect their property, she essentially used that for fundraising purposes. And judges in Missouri said that's inappropriate. You're not supposed to use prosecutions for political purposes. And yet that's exactly what she had done. So, look, I think that's absolutely going to be part of the appeal. And regardless, that type of conduct is inappropriate and absolutely reprehensible.
Zack Smith from Heritage joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Zack, all of that withstanding, prosecutors and the defense team for Trump, I guess, is there a magic bullet here for them to win on appeal? And what are their chances of winning an appeal? It's always an uphill battle.
Yeah, I think that's right. Look, I don't know that there's a magic bullet. I think there are going to be numerous appellate issues that Trump and his legal team are going to be able to raise. There's at least 10 or more by my count, everything from the judge's refusal to recuse, even though he donated to the Biden campaign and other left-leaning groups. There's only a very small amount, $35, but that's still inappropriate and seems like a conflict of interest. So the judge's refusal to recuse, the failure for the change of venue, issues related to fair notice. You may recall Alvin Bragg had to bootstrap these misdemeanors into felonies, but he never really, and the only way he could do that is to show the bookkeeping offenses were made with the intent to cover up another crime, but he never specified really what that other crime was. Issues related to the testimony the judge let in, issues related to the jury instructions that the judge gave the jury, telling them what the applicable law was. So I think Donald Trump and his legal team have many, many appellate issues they can raise. The main question Trump and his team are facing now is, from a strategic standpoint, how do they want to raise those issues? Do they want to try to go through the normal New York State Court appellate process? Do they try to want to expedite the appeal, get to the U.S. Supreme Court as fast as possible, if possible? Do they want to try to, get into lower federal courts in some way? And so I think those are the types of strategic decisions that Trump and his team are probably thinking about right now.
I only have about 45 seconds, but Zack, if you can preview the couple of big cases that we're waiting on in the next week or so from the Supreme
Court.
Court.
A couple of big First Amendment, big tech cases, the net choice cases out of Florida and Texas. There's the big case out of Missouri, Murphy versus Missouri, whether the Biden administration colluded with big tech, forced big tech to remove information unfavorable that the administration disagreed with. There's a couple of important administrative law cases, the Woper, Bright, and Relentless cases, essentially, that could upend the deference that federal courts have to give to administrative agencies. And then there's a very important case that could impact the ability of communities to deal with homelessness, a question of whether or not homeless policies violate the Eighth Amendment. It's the Grants Pass case. And so there will certainly be many big cases, including the Trump immunity case as well, that the court has yet to decide.
And the next time when we chat, we will be talking about those.
Yeah, looks bullish on Wall Street, even with a Juneteenth day off. The S&P 500, fresh record, artificial intelligence giant that we all wish we had stock in, NVIDIA, continued to march on. Microsoft, still the most, and they outreaching Microsoft as the most valuable public company right now. Market index added 0.25%. NASDAQ inched up. Tech heavy closed at a high rate. The Dow Jones Industrial up to 0.15%. And like we said, a lot of the market watchers are saying, the consumers are trying to stay with the NVIDIA jump and jump and jump as much as they can, and that's really what's generated this tech heavy jump in where we're at right now. Like we said, even with Juneteenth being an off day for the market.
Yeah, and the global markets continue on, futures trading and stuff too. So there's always activity in the markets, even when the American markets are closed. And John, there's another breaking story that I think let's pivot away from the market report because there's another breaking story locally that we need to cover.
Yeah, firefighters on the scene of a large fire at the Hilke Ice Plant that's out in Freeburg. We've seen Facebook video showing numerous trucks on the scene and flames and smoke high into the air. And anybody who knows Hilke Ice, they provide ice to hundreds of stores and dozens of states all across mid-Missouri. And man, oh man, how about this coming at their Hilke Ice's busiest time of the year, especially with our heat wave and July 4th celebrations are right around the corner. Some scary video we've seen.
It's really, really eerie, isn't it? I mean, just within the month, we've had a big fire at the fireworks plant over in Boonville, the fireworks distribution center in Boonville, and now this in Freeburg. I mean, right at the height of where those people, business centers, and of course consumers hurt as well when they don't have access to those goods. So, wow.
And they are a big producer. Like we said, they go to, I think they said the one time we talked to them, they go to like 800 different stores.
Ooh, wow. various places, and you see things. We were texted a video with that ice manufacturer that was on ice producer that was on fire. Boy, that picture is really chilling, John. It's something else.
Yeah, it's a major fire we're getting from
over there in Freeburg.
From the Hilke Ice Plant, Freeburg. That's such a giant operation. Like we said, they deal with 800 stores, I think, at last count, in 25 states and all. And, this is the busiest time of the year, obviously, especially with our heat wave and all. So, man, oh, man, it's a big business and a pretty good-sized employer in Freeburg, too.
Yeah. Well, yesterday were some interesting hearings. The Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, of course, that's chaired by a Democrat, heard expert testimony from 4 doctors, PhD-type doctors. 2 from the defense, from the Democrat side, produced by the Democrats, one of whom was the author of the, quote, proximal origins of COVID-19, that paper that sort of poo-pooed the idea that it may have come from a natural reservoir. And then there were 2 that the GOP produced as well. And it's just interesting. I mean, these are all people with a lot of academic credentials, right? And I mean, so I think it shines light on how science isn't always able to find the truth. There is a truth, right? Can we all admit there's a truth? And the question is, how do we discern the truth? And in the meantime, how do we process the information as it comes in? I think scientists struggle with that. I think we all struggled with that as COVID was evolving, as the response to the vaccine, both adverse effects were being reported, perhaps underrepresented, sometimes misrepresented by the media when the media was taking on face value the VAERS reporting, the vaccine adverse events site. That's just, hey, anytime anyone had anything that happened after they got the vaccine, and things happen naturally, whether you had a placebo vaccine or the real vaccine. People have heart attacks. People have strokes. People have, irregular periods, right? And so that is not a curated and adjudicated and analyzed site, but yet the media ran with that as somehow evidence that the vaccine was bad for everyone, when it turns out that probably the vaccine was more dangerous than the virus for many people. But at any rate, so we in discerning what is the truth, that's what science is about. And just to give you a little example, here is one of the experts, Dr. Gregory Koblin, and this is what he said about the origins of the vaccine.
I believe the available evidence points most strongly to a natural zoonotic spillover event as the origin of the pandemic. However, a research-related accident can't be ruled out at this time. A key obstacle to more definitive conclusion is the lack of transparency exercised by the Chinese government, which affects assessments of both potential pathways to the pandemic.
Okay, so there's a guy that says, look, I think it was probably a natural reservoir, but I can't rule out the other. Here, on the other hand, is a more strident statement about the non-natural origins from Dr. Richard Ebrig, E-B-R-I-G-H. Here it is.
Multiple lines of secure evidence point to a research origin. By contrast, as I hope I will have the opportunity to review in response to questions, no, zero secure evidence points toward a natural origin.
And another of the GOP witnesses, named Dr. Quay, basically said it was a 1 in a billion chance that it came from a natural origin. So they were much more succinct, much more certain, more forceful on the GOP side. Mike Murphy joins us now. And Mike, isn't it interesting how I think honest scientists will say, look, I'm leaning this way. I think it's pretty clear that this way. But they'll say, look, I can't be sure. And yet you'll see politicians absolutely run with the ball and politicize what is still an area of reasonable debate in the scientific community.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how the scientists, too, their science somehow, some way is affected by their ideological beliefs.
Yeah. And the media flavors all of the discussion, too.
Correct. Look at climate change. The wide amount of diversity. Nobody really disagrees there's some climate change going on, but they disagree, hugely on what's causing it or what mankind's contribution is to it.
And yet those of us who say, like Tony Lupo joins us and says, look, there may be a man-made contribution, but he points to several lines of evidence that this is a natural ebb and flow.
Well,
and we don't get credit on those of us who say, wait a minute, let's not go crazy here and ruin our economy. Yes, let's admit there's a problem, but do we have to destroy our way of life, our quality of life for it?
They say we're in denial and we have our head in the sand. It's like, no, we don't. We just disagree. I hear it all the time, especially down around Columbia City Hall. Somebody goes up, a meeting hardly goes by when somebody doesn't appear in front of Columbia City Hall, stamping their feet about how they can be in denial about the climate emergency and how come they're not doing something about it. Nobody ever comes in and says what they should be doing about it exactly or what they could be doing about it, but it's always we're in denial because it's like the apocalypse is tomorrow.
You think of it from a practical perspective. What is the rational thing for a policymaker? Let's say at the city level, Jefferson City, Columbia, one of our communities around. What, if anything, is the scope, the authority, and then the obligation of a community to help the citizens stay safe and be healthy, because people who, for instance, can't afford or don't have air conditioning, that does affect them. And so I understand that there is a role. What do you think that role should be?
I don't know. In Columbia, it's a little different because they own an electric utility that buys power. And most of that power comes from coal factories right now because it has to. And in fact, it's funny that we're talking about that right now because, in fact, Columbia has an ordinance that has guidelines for its utility in terms of how fast they have to move on to renewable.
Yes, I remember.
And they want to, they just can't. It's not available. There's nobody who doesn't want to. The complexities are enormous, and people come in and stamp their feet. They don't really understand what the complexities are. But
reliability being a big problem too. Yeah.
Well, for sure, and availability.
Yeah.
But they're going through right now. They have to write a new ordinance, and there's a committee, the Water and Light Advisory Board, is spending a lot of time on what that ordinance should look like and what the city's exact role should be. It's a fascinating conversation because if you want to be serious, it's complicated, and guidance is hard to exactly articulate. If you want to be silly, you can come in and demand you need to be 100% renewable by 2030. That's just silly, and that's what people want. But there's some people at City Hall, volunteers, community members, working hard on this, and it's pretty interesting, and you'll be hearing more about it in Columbia here in the upcoming months because they do have to update their ordinance.
Well, speaking of electricity and its affordability and keeping up with the growth of a community, I mean, you referenced earlier that, my gosh, it's taken them 6 years to get on get off the pot on the water issue. What about the electric
This is
issue?
why I'm here for Columbia, and I think there's this impending crisis. I'm thinking, Mike, why do you keep saying that? So we talked about water and $100 million of deferred maintenance that was just all of a sudden upon us. In 2016, they passed a $60 million bond issue, and part of it, half of it, was to build a major new electric high-voltage transmission line across all the way from east to west across South Columbia to connect substations. They needed to do that to move power to balance overloaded substations. They had it ready to go, $30 million worth, and it got shut down by the politicians, by City Council in 2016, over people complaining about where the path is going to go. It was going to go right down Water School Road, Nifong, and Grindstone Parkway, turn north and down Scott Boulevard. So they paused it. That's in 2016. Now here we are 8 years later. It's never been restarted. The utilities director is now saying we have to do this. We need it. In fact, he's not saying it too loud, but we actually need one in North Columbia here in the near future also. So we're going to have to get this done. It's going to rip the Band-Aid off the whole argument. There's going to be all kinds of political noise about it. But here's the point that'll get lost for a while. That was a $30 million project in 2016. What do you think that's going to cost today? That's deferred maintenance on our electric grid. That's well over $100 million of. And now they do have $30 million of bonding authority left for what it's worth. They can sell bonds and finance it. They'll have to have a rate increase to pay for that principal and interest. That'll be a modest amount of money. But the other probably $70, $80, $100 million left to get this project done. And then right on the heels of another one in North Columbia, our water and light utilities are getting way backed up in deferred maintenance. And it's not numbers that can be overcome like 10, 20, 30 million anymore. It's getting into the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a real, Como Buzz is working on this story all the time and writing about it. But it hasn't been pulled together and really resonate yet with people, but it's going to.
Well, we need to keep beating that drum. Now, I have another thought. The administration and the council, and I would say the general decision-making group in Columbia is a very self-assigned, progressive group, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, our mayor's the former, head of sustainability,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay. I think more and more people who they call themselves recovering, environmental wackos, are increasingly recognizing that the future of cheap, available energy and reliable energy is nuclear.
Absolutely.
And there's now the advent of the modern modular nuclear power plant, which is cooled with sodium, I believe, and it's not. I mean, so the old 3 Mile Island Chernobyl thing,
right?
Very unlikely to happen in this scenario.
Right.
Europe is beginning to move in that direction. Bill Gates is converting a coal mining county, a town up in Wyoming or Montana, using this technology. Why isn't someone saying, hey, 10 years from now, let's have as a long-term goal, getting away from the bought power, let's make our own with a nuclear power plant?
I think that...
Is that just too ambitious?
Yeah, the direction is, there's two legs to what you're talking about there. Number one is, somebody's got to get some nuclear power plants built. I think there's a widespread acceptance of that in the utility community. The city of Columbia is never going to get involved in something like that. The city of Columbia, where I've gone in a 2-year period from thinking that we need to run these utilities because it's great. You have municipal utilities, you cut out the middleman, you serve your citizens. I think that we're going to have a serious discussion about selling them and privatizing them simply because we can't run them.
Well, the big thing is, you talk about the Callaway plant and all. The initial plan when it was built back in the 80s was for 2 operational reactors to go in there. Then Ameren had cost overruns and cut it back to 1 reactor. Then they pushed for the small modular nuclear reactors, which are basically the small ones like they have on subs to be put at the Callaway site. And they didn't make the cut for that. It's just to build the infrastructure is the sticking point with nuclear.
And there's so many ironies. And we also have a fairly significant nuclear reactor functioning in Columbia right now at the university, making isotopes for use around the world. And they're planning on building another one here in the next 10 years, twice the size. More irony is, much of our power, as much as people would be objecting to nuclear power, much of our power here in Columbia actually comes from that nuclear plant in Fulton. So we buy it from places like Sikeston and Prairie State over in Illinois and Iatan over in Kansas City. Yep. We buy it from them, but they load it onto the grid. What really comes into your house to run your refrigerator is what's nearby, and that's coming from the Thomas Hill up in Moberly coal plant and the nuclear plant over in Fulton. So there's a lot of nuclear-generated electrons running refrigerators here in Columbia that people have no idea that that's the case.
Well, and I think the Callaway plant's numbers, the last time we heard from them, it was like about 1/5 of all of Ameren's power comes from the Callaway plant.
Wasn't it just a decade or so ago when there was a vote in Missouri to do some research for a new power plant or for expansion of nuclear power in Missouri, and just to do the investigative work, and the voters voted that down? You remember that?
No, I don't. We can't. Voters. This is why democracies are different. When we take things like utility and turn them into democracies, we really need some people. People who in positions of influence and leadership to move this in the right direction, because we have to face up, no matter what technology brings, wind and solar ain't going to get it done.
Yeah.
Wind and solar
I discovered on TikTok, Miss Hannah,
proud
on Leftovers.
So proud.
I couldn't believe my ears nor my lion eyes when I heard this video. Now, this is inside an elevator with a Caucasian manager who is telling a African-American woman who apparently he fired for being 4 hours late without notice at Macy's. This is a Macy's manager. This is the discussion inside the elevator in 2024.
So can I get my check or something?
Yeah, we'll mail it to you.
Mail it
Just
to
get
me.
off right here.
I need money today then. If you guys gonna fire me for no reason. Press 8, please. No, that's not fair. What happened? Oh. That's not fair. I'm sorry, babe.
Look, I pressed the lobby for you. You can get off there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, see you.
Oh my God, yo.
See you.
I'm not, no.
Yeah, we're not running on black people time. Get off the elevator.
Excuse me, what?
You heard
Excuse
me?
I want this. You want
this
to see?
What he said was, we're not running on black people time.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
I mean, that's 2024, ladies and gentlemen.
Why is she being fired in an elevator, too?
Well, I think she'd already been fired, and she wanted to get her check and whatever. That was what the discussion started out about. Now, she's wrong for showing up late without notice, and she maybe should have been fired. I think she may have a case there. What do you think?
No, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Throwing the old CPT line back in her face, that's pretty brave.
And there were other African Americans standing in the elevator. They just stood there very stoically, and no one. She was outraged, of course, over the racist comment. I mean, my jaw dropped when I saw that.
Yeah.
Happy Juneteenth.
Yeah.
And by the way, Willie Mays, one of the greatest baseball icons of all time, has passed away, 93 years old. I remember, man, having my flip card of Willie Mays. I didn't put that one on my bicycle spokes.
Nope. He was a hero of our time for sure.
Oh, I remember being in Little League and getting yelled at by our manager for all of us trying to do the over-the-shoulder basket catch.
That's right. That's right. Well, that'll wrap it up for this edition of Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Thanks for being in, Mike.